Too late. Okay. Welcome to the live podcast, Win More on Purpose. Today we have Pincus Schiff with us on personal branding and sales, making sure that no one can forget you. The agenda, for those who are not familiar, it's going to be more of a conversation. We're going to be learning together here. So make sure to write down your questions. There'll be Q&A at the end, and there will be a recording for anyone who needs to jump out early. To start off, everyone who's here, if you could please put into the chat, what are you focusing on in your business today, or where are you coming from? We'd love to get, an understanding of those types of things as we start off the podcast always. And for those who don't know me, my name is Jakob Steinberg. I realized when I first started in the coaching space about 4+ years ago now, people were able to build a 6-7 figure business on their own. They're good at what they do. They're passionate. Some put along the way, they learn how to speak to people. And they'd hit this glass ceiling as they went through that process, either in the beginning or the middle of their journey. Many times it's because the word sales has a used car salesman connotation to it, or they were just looking to get more processes and strategies in the business. And that's where I came into the picture: mindset, techniques, skills, really giving them that know-how and that confidence and clarity when speaking to new people, as well as following up. Thankfully, I've had the pleasure of working with people like Chaya Fishman, Hoodie Bloch, Hoodie Greenberger, just to name a few of the pretty well-known personalities, even on LinkedIn. And when it comes to growing people's business, thankfully, people at the 6-7 figure benchmark have been able to grow even 50% in the first 60 days of working with me. Those at the 100K, give or take, have been able to grow even 150% in the first 60 to 90 days. And those solopreneurs, even only doing $4,000 a month, have been able to grow by 200 to 240% in the first 45 days of working with me. It really brings my three passions together of sales, teaching, and helping people. And Pincus, with that, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi, Yaakov. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Pincus, if you don't know me. Started out in sales in 2018, did sales for a company for 3 years, and then launched our company Friday. Friday is a simple team management and payroll platform designed specifically for small businesses. So our goal is to simplify life, helping them manage, track, and pay their team. Thank you so much for having me. Let's dive in.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really, really excited to have you here today. Let's start from the beginning, right? We named this making sure that no one can forget you. What's the best way when it comes to helping people to remember you within the sales process?
Okay, so tough question. There's a lot of ways. People forget very quickly. There's hundreds of thousands of salespeople out there. People trying to approach every single business owner or target. And there's a lot of ways to make sure people remember you. So if there's one specific way, no, absolutely not. But you got to be bold. You have to stand out. You have to make sure people can't forget you. And there's numerous ways. Like, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can either try to focus on multiple channels, or being extremely bold and making sure even when you meet a person one time, they'll never forget you. But I'll tell you this: most of the clients that have signed up throughout the years, I had no idea who they are, but they all knew me. And when the right time came and they needed my product or my service, they knew how to reach out and where to find me. So making sure you're bold, make sure you know your product well, making sure that people know what you do. I'll sometimes find friends and they'll say, "Hey, why don't you refer business to me?" And I'm like, "I have no idea what you're selling or which business you are into." If people don't, especially if I'm a friend of yours and I don't know what you do, you're doing something wrong. So just make sure people know what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would even add, like on a post that I made today, a lot of times when we go above and beyond from a service perspective and really caring about the other person to the nth degree and what's going on in their world, their goals, their life, and not just from a business perspective, it really shifts the whole conversation where they, like that guy was really different, or that woman was really different. She really cared. He really cared about me. And I found, time and time again, that's always made a big difference in people, remembering who I am. A big part of helping people to remember you is having a personal brand, which is the second part of, what we called our episode today. What do you feel is the best way to build a personal brand? I know that that's something that you've spent a lot of time on yourself, even as, when you were a salesperson. Tell us a little bit about that.
So there's a few ways to go about building a personal brand. So number one, it's not for everyone. There's a lot of pain. Again, similar to sales, is not for everyone, right? You need the ability to go through a certain amount of pain. Building a brand is even more painful. Being like the ability to stand out, the ability to make sure people know you. But I would say number one, become an expert. If you don't know what you're selling, if you don't know your product inside out, if you're not the number one expert in my book, then you're never going to make it. As far as your brand, I want people, when they think about payroll, the first name to pop up is Pincus Schiff. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time, but I did educate myself a lot. Every time I got a question from someone, most of them, not even my clients or referral partners, just random people asking questions. If I didn't know the answer, I'll research it and I'll go back to that person and say, based on my research, this and this is the case, this is the situation. So researching a lot about your industry, knowing the ins and outs, knowing the newest trends, like where's the industry heading. And once people start recognizing you're the leader in that industry, then slowly, if you put out enough content, if you make sure you show up at events, and you keep on showing up, your personal brand will grow up. And there's no magic button, and there's no like, some people get a trophy, salesperson of the year. You'll never get a trophy saying your personal brand has been built. It doesn't work that way. It's a process. It gets built more and more over time. And if you don't see results, then you have to go back to the drawing board, see, hey, where am I going wrong? Why don't I get enough business? And how do I change that?
Yeah, and I would even add on top of that, I think that a big part of coming across as that expert and that authority in the space is really knowing who you're talking to, understanding your ideal client, understanding who it is that you're trying to give over value to will, number one, tell you how to give over that value and what it is that they want to hear. But even more than that, it's how to talk to them and what it is that they're looking for and the nuances of how you're going to speak to that specific person. And I think that's also a very big part of, building that personal brand.
That's
Move,
after they already got to know you and they're ready with you on the phone. Building a brand, obviously, there's a lot of parts to it, but the main focus is even before they call you, before they reach out, they know who you are. I'll give you a little example. We signed up a law firm last week, Thursday, or it was Thursday. Today we're talking about Tuesday, and there was Shabbos Purim in the middle. I already sent them a client, a potential client today. Why? Because the second they get in the phone, I'm like, hey, what business are you in? They're like, we're in law. What do you practice? Litigations. Beautiful. And then I'll try to remember whenever someone needs a litigation lawyer, that name will pop up and people go crazy over that. And I'll tell you, a lot of leads that like literally looked like dead leads, people would never responded to me or anything, but suddenly, hey, I sent them a referral. I don't even tell them sometimes about it. Someone calls and is like, hi, I know you're in this industry. I got your number from Pincus Schiff. This person will go crazy for that. And they'll first it starts with a message, then they can't ignore me anymore. So it's a full-time picture. I think if you want to be in sales, if you want to influence people, if you want to become a brand, I think a few hours of your day is based on connecting people with other people. And even if you don't get money instantly, you'll make money of it in the long term. So
yeah, no, I think it's definitely a legitimate point in the sense that, like we said earlier, when you care about others, then there's no question that you'll be rewarded time and time again, more so than you ever would have if you weren't doing that in the beginning. I want to take a completely different angle to the conversation, though. I want to throw a bit of a curveball at you. Have you ever pushed away a sale, right? We were just saying that this past week you brought on someone on Thursday. Tell us about a time that you had to push away a sale, if you've ever been able to do that.
So I probably pushed away this equal amount of people that I signed up. So, and that's crazy, but it's necessary. And I think I wouldn't have so many sign-ups, so many clients if I wouldn't push away people. So number one, you have to find out what the person wants. Number two, if you're a good fit and you can't fool yourself, try to be as authentic as possible. And if it's like something that we could make it work, like with a workaround, I'll tell the client up front, we could make it work, but there's a workaround about it. So if you want it the perfect way, we're not for you. Especially when I started my company, when we started Friday, we were extremely limited with the amount of features that we had. And that taught me literally to ask the client upfront every single feature that they want. And even though even today we have most of the features small businesses want and need, while keeping it extremely simple, I'll still go over the client exactly like, what does a perfect payroll platform look like to you? Most of the times they'll tell you, hey, I just need simple payroll. I just need a box delivered. I just need, but they're like, beautiful. I love that. How do you see the platform working for you? And then they'll give you the picture they have in their head. And you'll see if the client is not going in your direction, where your company is heading, then it's not a client for me. And I probably sent clients to most of the competitors. I enjoy doing that. If you're not a good fit for me, instead of telling you, hey, it's not going to work, I'll say, let me do a little bit of research. There's a lot of payroll platforms, a lot of payroll companies, service-based businesses. Let me do some research for you. And a lot of times they don't want to, they'll tell you, hey, I just need very simple, but in reality, they don't want a software. They want customer service. They want someone doing all the work for them. Then Friday's not for you. I'll guide you in the perfect way. So
Right. No, and it's a very legitimate point that you're making. A lot of people, when it comes to bring a sale, especially in the beginning, and it's amazing that you were able to have that foresight right from the get-go, because especially a new business starting out, they want every single sale that's going to come their way. And in reality, a lot of times that happens is they end up regretting it later because they have clients that aren't getting exactly what they need. They're suffering, the clients are suffering, nobody's happy. And ultimately, when it comes to our businesses, we really need to have situations that are win-win for everybody. Because the second that we don't have that, they automatically associate you as a person that's not giving them that win-win. And forget the fact of them sending you business. They're going to quite possibly be doing the opposite. So it's definitely something that I think is extremely important when it comes to understanding who is and who isn't a right fit. That brings us to the next question that I had is how often do you say no to people? Because that falls right in line with that same concept.
So I don't think there's like a measurement for that. I'll say no every time they're not a good fit for me. So it's not a percentage or like I only take 10 clients per week. I'll take every client that is a good fit for me, and every client that's not a good for me, it's not good for our company. And a client that I don't think that would appreciate my platform, I'll send away. I'll tell you even more. I think one of the biggest mistakes business owners make when they start their company, they say yes to everything. And after half a year, if they're successful, if they're not successful, that's good. They don't even have clients. But if they're successful, they start getting a lot of clients and the company is in chaos. They have no process, there's no system, there's no target client. If they want to grow, they have no idea who to go to, who's my perfect client. And they're busy probably 80% of the time servicing clients that's not even a good fit, just building workarounds, doing manual work that they shouldn't be doing. So saying no, I think it's not a weakness. It's one of the biggest strengths a salesperson or a business owner can have. When you see someone that is not your right client, even though you're stressed. And there's been times, there's a lot of companies that I talk with, business owners, people have times where they really don't have money, their business is really struggling, and they still say no. And that's something I admire.
Yeah, and it's a strength that I think is lacking today. So many people, when they're in that pinch, when they need that client, they'll say yes because even though that person's not necessarily the right fit, and they can help that person, it's not like they can't be of service to those people. They could definitely help them. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not their forte. It's not the place that they sit best. It's not the area that they've really excelled in. And it's really going to put them past. Now, yes, there is something to, challenging yourself on something new, but that's not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about an instance where it's really not good for the client. It's not really good for the business either.
Challenging yourself to something new is if you're heading in a certain direction. And I'll give you an example of in the beginning, we only took people with 1 to 10 employees. It's not our end goal, right? It was just at the beginning. So once we launched more features, we started taking people 10 to 20. And sometimes when we took 20 employee companies, it was a stretch for us. And we literally had to go in the next few weeks, be busy implementing new stuff, building new features. But as long as it's in the direction that you're heading, it's okay. And it's more than okay. You should push yourself.
Right.
And unless you want to stay stuck, you need sometimes a push, a few clients that they're going to make you crazy to go to the next step. But if the client is not a right fit for you and it's not the direction you're heading, then no, absolutely not. It will destroy you.
Agreed. Which part of
That goes.
sales? Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Which part of sales do you enjoy most?
It's not a part of sales that I enjoy most. I enjoy most of my days actually connecting people and being a resource. Instead of waking up
Sales.
every day saying, hey, who is going to make me crazy today? Who am I going to need to work for today? It's like, who can I service today? Which small business owner can I really help? Whose life can I make easier today? And that's the part I enjoy about my day is giving referrals, understanding people's business, helping them with struggles, although it's not my job and I don't make money of it. In general, talking to people, that's the part I enjoy most.
Fantastic. And I would say that actually that is the ultimate of sales, right? Sales isn't really selling someone a service in essence. It's really serving people in the highest degree. That sometimes means that we're serving our community, our family, or it means servicing people in a way that we're going to send clients in their direction, help them with something that we're not going to get anything back for. Although we always get back at some point along the line. But I
Correct.
would agree, like that, without question, the idea of service has really deteriorated, where today most sales people don't even associate the concept of the human to human interaction of what sales really is, which is connecting people and being of service with sales, right? We automatically hear the word sales, and a lot of people automatically think of selling someone, even sometimes in something they don't need. And in the real translation of what sales used to be and what it's coming back to, hopefully, I think with a lot of people that I've been speaking to, we're getting back slowly, but we're getting back to that place that sales really is about that service. It's about connecting people and connecting to people in a way that's going to help them to move forward with their business and in their life in general.
It
Uh,
reminds me, I had a conversation. I'm sorry for cutting you off,
no, no,
but
no, go ahead.
I had a conversation with a salesperson, and he said, all I enjoy about my job is making money. There's nothing that I enjoy more than making money and helping clients, or I don't really care. So I said, he's in the finance loan industry. So I said, if you can help a client get a loan for let's say you earn $5,000, but the client really didn't need the loan, he's going to regret it later on. Or you have a different deal. You make only $4,000, but you save the business for closing down. And this guy is making a lot of money today. Which one would you choose? Then it's like, okay, I'm ready to lose $1,000 for that feeling. And you have it inside. I think every salesperson, every person in general, they really want to help people. You just get, when you're in sales and you're desperate, you become so pushy, you start focusing on the dollar. But just take a step back, think, what do you really enjoy about your job? What is it that you really enjoy about? You'll see money is just the gasoline. We need it in order to drive forward, but it's not an end goal. And it shouldn't be the end goal.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, it's a great way of bringing it out for that salesperson. You probably did them a tremendous service in the fact that you help them realize that it's really inside, because the way that that person's going to interact with their clients is going to take a shift from that day, right? And they're going to start thinking differently in the sense of like, what's their purpose when it comes to their business? Um, it brings me into, the next side of things is a lot of times within sales, we mess up, whether because we said something that was off, we completely blanked out, whatever have you. How does a person deal with mess ups? And is there a difference whether they're the company, they're the CEO or not?
So it's not just in sales, to answer your question. It's life. In life, we all mess up. Every parent messes up sometimes. Every spouse, with friends, and the same as in your job, and the same as in sales. So I think giving yourself the freedom to mess up, it's one of the greatest things and gifts you can give yourself. Knowing that no matter what happens, it's okay to mess up. And I used to push my salespeople, my team, to go to certain accountants, go outside of their comfort zone. And I would always tell them, this time I want you to mess up. And it's okay. You'll never visit this person again. You'll never get business. And if you don't visit them, you also don't get business, right? So there's nothing to lose. Just mess it up once. And the freedom of messing things up gives you so much comfortability. You'll just nail it. I wish someone would give me the freedom to mess up this podcast. It would just give me like, screw it, just be yourself.
The floor is
Um,
yours, my friend.
I know, but to a certain extent, right? Imagine you have zero pressure, zero performance pressure. You're just yourself. Nothing can go wrong. So I think it's okay to mess up. And I messed up a lot of times. I can tell you that. Sometimes I fixed it. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Just got to move on.
There's no question. I mean, I've lost track of the times that I've messed up in my own time as a salesperson, let alone as an entrepreneur. But I mean, like at running my own business, there's no question I've messed up more times than I can keep track of. But that's how we grow, right? Ultimately, we look at mess ups like failure, but failure isn't the end. It's a stepping stone towards success, in the sense that when you learn from your mistakes, that's where you're really dusting yourself off and keeping yourself moving forward, because you learn from it. right? So that's the freedom of when you mess up. And as a salesperson especially, but even more so as a service provider running your own business, when you're constantly giving yourself that pressure that it has to be perfect, you're just making your job harder because
Right.
it stops you from being able to be yourself. It makes you clamp up, and you're more likely to mess up and
Because
regret
of that.
doing it as opposed to just enjoying and feeling free within the process because of it. um it kind of is, it's interesting because when we think of mess ups, a lot of times it automatically brings back for me times when I was rejected as a salesperson, right? And I'll respond to this one as well, but how did you deal with rejection the first time that you were rejected, and then how did you learn how to deal with it as time went on?
So first time, I probably didn't know how to deal with it. To be honest, it destroyed me. Cold calling was very painful. With time, you learn two things. Number one, no one rejects you personally. They don't even know you. You're a stranger on the phone. They don't even remember your name. They have no idea who you are. So they're rejecting your product that you're offering them, or they're rejecting your skill. So let's take it apart for a little bit. Um, your skill as a cold caller. If you're a beginner, your skills are not developed yet, and people hang up on you. So they don't reject you personally. They reject maybe your skill set. And that's something
At
that's
most.
going to be at most. And that's something that you can change. It's not something that's not changeable. So know that people don't reject you. They reject your skill. And just for revenge, make sure you sharpen your skills so much. Like when you're really angry, and by the way, sometimes being angry and rejected gives you so much motivation. It's negative energy, but it can get you far. So say, hey, this guy hung up on me. It's very, very painful. I'll train myself for the next half an hour how to get past that rejection. And I remember once when I started cold calling, I called up this, and the person picked up. They said, delete my number from your list. Never call me again. You're an idiot. And she hung up. And I was just so I was in pain. And I said, what can I do next time? If someone tells me exactly the same thing, what would I do differently? And the answer that I'd say, I'm sorry, I can't delete your number from my list. And that person would get even angrier and say, why not? There's no list. It's just me trying to help small business owners. So I never got the chance to say that again to a person, but getting the rejection and dealing with it and using it to learn how to be better the next time. That's one way. But yeah, otherwise it is painful. No one is going to tell you that if you're going into sales, it's not going to be painful. You have to be ready for it. Know that people will reject you, your product, your skills, whatever it is they'll reject. And it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I can't say that I remember the first time that I was rejected, because even when I did start, I started off as a cold caller when I first went into sales, and then moved up into as a closer and giving, demos and presentations. But when I first started off, people hanging up on me wasn't like the worst thing in the world. But when people were just nasty for no reason, like I made a post about this the other day when we were, when I was talking about the podcast that we were going to have today. It was like I had one person who just went completely off the walls on me. And I hadn't even done anything. Like I called, and I was even referred to this person. That's what made it so much worse. I was like totally not expecting it. And he just went crazy. And I was able to reframe, I went to my VP and I was like, I don't even know what to do with this. Like there's nowhere for my sensitive soul to put this type of abuse. What do I do? And he helped me reframe. I was able to get back on the call. But I would say that today, if I was giving advice to that Yakov Steinberg all the way back then, it would be that people, to a big degree, this is something that I heard ages ago. They're like garbage trucks. We go around all day long picking up garbage, and eventually we need somewhere to dump it. Sometimes it ends up getting dumped on us, especially as a salesperson, because they feel like just you're just a salesperson. You have no
Correct.
feelings. I'll just dump it on you. When in reality, it doesn't have anything to do with you. It's just smile and wave at that point, because they're not doing it because of you. They're not necessarily rejecting you or even your skill set, although many times they are. But a lot of times it's just they've gotten into a fight with someone that morning
You
or
just called in the
whatever
wrong
have you.
time.
You called at the wrong time. They literally had every bad thing happen to them on the way into the office. They just got who knows what, lost their biggest client. And when we can reframe things in a way that helps us to understand that ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not about us. That's the simplest way to move forward throughout that process. What would you say?
Putting your ego aside, it's hard, but it's doable. A couple of months ago, we got an inquiry from a company. Basically, they reached out, they want to use our time tracking system. And I said, sure, who should I get in touch with? Let's hop on a call. They replied with a number of the manager to reach out. So I call up this guy and, hi, I'm Pincus. Thanks for reaching out. And the guy didn't expect my call for some reason. He's just a manager in the company. And just like you said with the garbage truck, he dumped everything on me.
Oh,
None of the
no.
systems we used in the past worked. Everything, there's problems every day. Like literally after 12, 13 minutes, he like stopped,
Wow,
was like
that's a record.
waiting for me. Yeah, he was waiting for me to respond. I said, I'm so sorry for that. I just got an email from your company to reach out to you. So I'd love to see, there is a chance that the system you're using is even better than the one I'm reaching out from. But I'll never know if I don't ask you a couple of questions. And the guy just like that, got disarmed. We had a great conversation. Happens to be, there's one feature specifically that they need in order to move forward, and we don't have that yet. So I told them we're not going to have it in the next couple of months. I'll reach out to them once we have it. And then in the middle, my salesperson, one of the people went down to this company to meet him. I got on the call. I said, I'll send someone down to see what it is exactly that you're using and you need. So he told my guy, he said, I'm amazed at Pincus. I screamed at him. I yelled. I was so mad. I'll tell you from my perspective, it's extremely painful. I own a company. I have enough clients, Baruch Hashem. I have a full team to support. I have a great team, good part, like everything. I don't need your abuse. It takes literally for me nothing to just hang up and say, okay. But I think the purpose of having a job, the purpose of working, the purpose of living is to refine yourself. And business gives you a perfect opportunity for that. So putting your ego aside and just listening to that person, instead of hanging up, it's a good opportunity. That's all it is. And the same as when an employee gets upset, or when when you have an issue with a partner, when you have an issue at home with your wife, with your kids, that's life. So sales
Yeah,
rejection is just another layer to work on yourself. That's all. Another opportunity.
I couldn't agree more, because ultimately, and yes, on having your own business fits into that, that same concept. But I mean, and kudos to you, 12, 13 minutes. I don't know if I would have lasted that long. But no, but ultimately you're giving this person, and one of the reasons he was, I would say, going from a psychological perspective and how he was able to, be disarmed so quickly, is because you showed him that you were giving him the space to go through this process. You literally just stood there and took it, knowing, and yeah, in that moment, it's very hard for us to detach. It's afterwards that usually we're able to be like, okay, he's not really yelling at me, because in the moment he's definitely yelling at you. Right? It's only
100%.
afterwards when we take that step back and we're able
at
to
least it feels that
reframe.
way.
Right, exactly. And only once, we hang up and we're able to take the step back and reframe, this person doesn't know me. He can't possibly be yelling at me because I have nothing to do with him. He doesn't know me from anything. That's when we're able to do the reframe. But in the moment, by you just staying there and letting that person just go crazy for 12, 13 minutes, it's a very powerful thing for both you and for them. Because for you yourself, like you said, and yes, if you can get to the level that in the moment you're able to have, that thought process, that's huge. Most people, they're not able to get to that level until a tremendous amount of self-work goes into it. But even within that moment, you're literally only being of service to this other person by letting them go through that. So by the time they're done and you show them who you really are, they feel so terrible at the fact that they went crazy on you, because you're obviously the wrong person to receive that. And you're really just here to help them. You're happy for the conversation to end right there. And you're clear about that. But ultimately, correct, I'm happy to ask you some questions and see if we could be a better fit than what you have currently. So I think that's a very powerful story to really bring out that point.
Correct.
Other than personal development, which I agree with you 100%, is one of the most, I think, important components of really becoming a solid salesperson. What are some other important components of really becoming a solid salesperson?
You talking about personal development?
Personal development in general. You can give me both.
I think it's communication. the number one. If you want to be in sales, if you want to deal with people, communication is the number one skill you need to acquire. I'm thinking probably negotiation would be number two. Even before selling. Selling is just a combination between communication and I'm thinking, yeah, it's just communicating and negotiating with a person. That's all it is. So I think if you have great people skills, great negotiation skills, you'll automatically become a great salesperson. And besides that, listening helps a lot. If you don't listen to a person, you never know what they want, what they need. You can't even start a conversation or start signing up clients before listening effectively. And it's very hard. As much as we listen so like throughout the day, we really listen, but we don't really listen. It's just passive listening. And there's effective listening and really understanding a person, connecting to that person. But yeah.
Yeah, the only one I would have added really would have been active listening when you started. And then you hit that number anyways, because ultimately when we're genuinely curious about people and we're actively listening, and I've always told when I used to manage salespeople, I say all the time, there's a very big difference between hear and listening, right? When you're listening to someone, it takes a pit stop in the middle on the way out the other side. When you're hearing, it just goes in and out the other end, right? Like you said, passive listening. We're not really listening in that moment. And therefore we miss a tremendous amount of information that's critical to really helping the person in front of us. So I would agree. And negotiating, I think, is really just another way of understanding how to ask questions in the right way with the right modalities to really be able to take someone through a conversation in a way that's going to help you to serve them in the best way possible. As an easy example, right, when I think of negotiating, right, Chris Voss is an easy example of someone who, constantly talks about negotiating and asking, different types of questions. Are there any particular books that you have appreciated when it comes to sales? Are there any, like, your favorite book?
So to be honest, I don't read a lot. Chris Voss's book, by the way, Never Split the Difference, one of the best books, and mirroring, I think it's chapter 3 or 4, is really crazy. It's one of the skills that if you really use it effectively, it will change everything you do. But in general, I don't read too much. I enjoy sometimes like podcasts, conversations, but I can't tell you like this book changed my life now. I don't think a book has the ability to change someone's life. Sometimes it's a concept of a book that if you really get it and like with God's help, it goes into you, then it works. But yeah.
Yeah, it's
you,
more, I
you read a
think.
lot, Yakov?
I don't read sales books that much, but yes, I like to read. Recently, I got more into it in order to take a step back from, my phone and allowing it, especially at nighttime and during the morning hours when I'm not really at work, early in the morning. I don't want to be ran by my phone at those times. So like I've turned to reading a book and to entertain myself if I'm looking for something like that, as opposed to being distracted by a phone. I see a big difference between entertainment and distraction. But yeah, no, I would agree with you in the sense that it's not a book that's going to necessarily change your life. It's a concept, something that you attach yourself to that could be found within a book. But it's more, the concepts that when you really connect to an idea, when you're able to, really embrace it and go deeper and deeper into it, that you're able to just change your whole entire outlook on something.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question for you. When it comes to bigger and smaller deals, many people have different, thought processes when it comes to the size deal that makes the most sense to go after. Where do you stand on that? Is it better to go after bigger or smaller clients?
Great question. I think it depends on every industry is different. The way I started was 80-20, 80% small customers, for multiple reasons, and 20% bigger clients. As you get more customers, more clients, you become better and more skilled in sales, you'll move it up. 30% bigger clients, 40%. And at some point you make enough money. So the reason why I advise salespeople not to start with bigger clients is very simple. There's a very low motivation. If you chase, let's pretend you need 5 big clients a year or 100 small clients a year. 5 clients a year means average 2.5 months per customer. Working on a single or even 5 big clients for 2.5 months, and there's a huge chance you're not going to get any contracts, any client signed before 5 months, you're going to lose your motivation throughout the 5 months versus focusing on smaller clients where you sign up once a week. Every time you sign up a client, you go into, the sign up zone, and you're there for a couple of hours or days. So focusing on smaller clients, especially in the beginning, allows you to be in that zone of closing mode. Versus focusing on bigger clients, you'll be depressed 50-60% of the time. You might close it in the end, but it's just a way more painful process. Number two, when it comes to referrals, if you want to build up your brand and your name and your referral base, one big client might not refer you another big client, but 20 smaller clients, the chances of you getting another 5 or 10 clients from that 20 is way greater than having a few bigger clients. So if you're a beginner, if you're starting your journey, you want to build up that momentum, you want to build up your name, your brand, I think 80-20 would make perfect sense. And then as time goes by, you have enough clients anyway, you make it money, you can focus more and more on getting bigger clients. But on Friday, we only service people with 1 to 50 employees, and our focus is people with 1 to 50. So we don't take, it depends. We do have a lot of clients that have more than 50. The concept is, if you need a simple platform and your organization runs in a simple manner, then Friday is perfect for you. Even if you only have 40 employees, if you run your organization like corporate America and you want every single setup and process, Friday is probably not for you. So Friday is very small business focused. So again, it depends on your industry. But yeah.
No, I think that it's a very fair point. A lot of people say, look, if I'm going to spend time on a deal, I might as well spend one on, I spend time on one that's going to bring more money into the company. But ultimately, I think you're 100% right that when it comes down to the type of company you are, and even more importantly, where you're holding in business, it makes all the difference in terms of what you're trying to do in terms of the different size deals that you're bringing in. Right? If you start off small and you're constantly bringing in small deals, and then as time goes on, you can build from there, it's very different than when you're trying to, like you said, get those 5 deals over the course of a year, because first of all, to actually get, those bigger deals can take that much longer. And even if by the end of the year you close 5 deals, right, as the example you gave, but it's feast or famine the whole entire time, the whole way through, as opposed to when you're able to build up those smaller clients, you have that much more of a likelihood of getting to a place where you're not doing, absolutely fantastic per se, but you are pretty stable as time is going on. Then you'll get a big deal every once in a while, and that'll, be reason to make a, huge celebration or whatever it is. But I definitely think that there's a tremendous amount to what you're saying in that sense that, pace yourself. Don't try to get too far ahead.
I think another thing I would add before we move on to the next question, is skills. So when you're new, there's a lot of sales skills that you need to acquire. And compare a salesperson. There's a lot of people that I know, very rich people. They close an average of 5 to 10 deals a year. Versus I have friends that they don't make that much money, but they close an average of 500-600 smaller deals a year. The sales skills and the knowledge that you gain while closing so many deals, so many different scenarios, meeting so many different industries, different business owners, it gives you way more potential. So when you find yourself 5 years later, let's say you're looking for a new opportunity, compare the two people, one who closed 10 big deals and made money, or one who closed 500. He knows so many more industries, so much more people, so much more opportunity, so much more referrals. So I think beginners, I would definitely recommend at least 80% focus on small clients.
No, and I think that that's a good assessment as well in terms of just from a skill set perspective, especially someone, who's in a sales position. It definitely makes more sense to go through that position because, like you said, when it comes to your value in the long term, the value you bring to the table as someone who, was bringing in, a certain percentage of the monthly recurring revenue for the company is one thing, but your ability to really know how to go and help people close deals and move things forward is a very important skill set that makes you infinitely more valuable than the number you were bringing into a specific company. I always like to end with a question that gets really practical. How should someone get started in sales, right? How do you get started with sales? And let's say, to take it even further, on the first day, what should someone be doing? And this could apply to both a salesperson and a service provider.
Beautiful. So I would say the first day it's all about planning, and I would say even the first week. So I started out, I remember the first few days I started cold calling people, and then I got so burnt out. And then I made myself a plan. How do I build my brand? How do I start getting referrals? How do I get clients without calling? So I think it all boils down to the first few days. Don't even try to call people. Educate yourself. That's number one. Learn the industry, but don't procrastinate. Don't think that you need to know every in and out about the industry before you starting to call. So there's a fine line of start with the basics. If you're in a bigger company, they probably have a curriculum, or there's so much information available online about anything and everything. Start learning about your industry, start figuring things out, and create a plan. Because just randomly starting to call, you'll get burnt out really quick. And I also think one of the steps that people skip a lot of the times is telling the people close to them, family and friends, about what they do. So if you're a weekend in your job, you don't have to do just cold calls. Call up your 20 friends from college, from school, and tell them, hi, just wanted to check in with you, wanted to say hello. I started out in this industry. This is the clients that I'm looking for. Just wanted to let you know, and you hang up. You'll be surprised how many referrals you'll get. It's not going to take a day and not a week, but over time, just letting people know what it is that you do. So that's the way to start, and then start planning. What should your day look like? How many calls do you want to do per day? How many follow-ups? Set yourself up with a good CRM, and slowly go. But one thing, every day needs to be better than the day before, and that's all. If you grow just by 1% a day, after a few years, you're the person in the industry. That's all it takes.
Well said. I really like that. And I think that consistency is the only thing I would add to that. Is like once you come up with that plan, sticking to it is the key to
Correct.
really continuously getting better every single day. Because the only person that we're trying to, the only competition we have in reality is ourselves from the day before. I want to be
Correct.
better than I was yesterday is going to help you through that process and making and gamifying that system to trying to constantly be better than you were the day before will, help within that process as well. This was absolutely fantastic. I really, really appreciate the value that you brought here today. Let's open the floor for questions and answers. Everyone who doesn't want to open their mics or their video, you can just as well put into the chat and I'll voice your question for you. It could be something that we spoke about on the episode today, something that you're stuck on. If you could ask one question on the topic of personal branding or making sure that no one could forget you, what would that be? And let's get into it already. So we have one question here from someone who is coming from Ohio. Very cool. Do you find cold calling or cold email more effective in terms of being more personable and allowing people to remember you?
Great question. I think you can't compare it. Cold calls, there's a certain amount of calls you can do per hour. I have never seen a person doing 100 calls per hour. I mean, maybe there are, but salespeople are not cold callers. It's totally different. Emailing, you can set up any software. You can email 100,000 people. So I don't think you can compare it. But personally, especially if you're selling high ticket items, calling is always the best. And don't be afraid to say, hi, this is me. And it's a cold call. You can start off with that. People actually appreciate it versus telling you, hey, we have met, and like lying about how you know each other. Being honest up front, try to make it as short as possible. Say, I'll just need 30, and don't say 30 seconds, by the way. It's always 32 and a half seconds or 37 seconds. And try to keep to that time frame. I never say I need 5 minutes, I need 4 minutes, or I need 6 minutes. Try to make it the reality. It might take some time, but yeah, I started out with cold calls, and the first 20, 30 clients were just purely from cold calls, and it works.
Yeah, same. I would also, I always lean towards cold calling because I've just found it to be, for myself personally, more effective, but I think it depends on the industry that you're in. So you can effectively write a good cold email in a way that will come across as personable, that will be able to connect with people in the right way. But it takes a tremendous amount of skill. Cold calling, on the other hand, if you're really starting out, I find that you can get away with, as long as you're starting off in the right way, I'll give that in a second, people will be more forgiving when it comes to cold calling, as long as you're just being you and you're really there to serve people. And you'll be able to learn a lot faster by messing up, through that process, using a couple of things we said today, right? Just an easy example when it comes to, what I always tell my own clients, you want to open up, in a way that's going to be different than the 15 other people that called them in the last hour. So I always like, the way that 20 years ago we did it was, hey, my name is Yakov. I'm calling from XYZ company. This is how I can help you. Nobody likes that, period. Full stop. End of conversation. The real way of doing it is, my name's Yakov. This is a cold call. I've already started with integrity. Nobody cares what your last name is. Nobody cares where you're calling from. Do you want to hang up on me now, or do you want to roll the dice? Right? Do something that's
Beautiful.
funny. Right? This is a cold call, but good news. I'm not calling about a timeshare or your car's extended warranty. Can you give me a minute? Right? Doing something that's going to, one, break the ice, be humorous, be honest and intentional about how you're calling. And from there, it's just about the relevancy and really showing them you understand what's going on in their world, asking them questions based around, the top 3 pain points they might be facing, and making it all about them. That's really the bottom line. So really being personable about it and taking it to that nth degree. Okay, we have another question here. From a personal branding perspective, what do you find to be the top way to differentiate yourself from the others in your industry? Well, that's a really good question.
Just being more knowledgeable and showing up more. You got to do what most people don't do, right? So
Well
doing
said.
more, outworking them. One thing that I wanted to add on the cold calling thing, I used to ask people a lot for it, and it always works, is asking people for help. I would love to know if we're a good fit for your company. Can you help me, please?
Definitely.
And people, especially Americans, love to help.
No,
So
for
that
sure.
worked a
And
lot.
it's one of the things that we talk about when it comes to getting referrals, right? Asking for advice as opposed to just asking for a name. So it's very, very powerful. I think that, one of the biggest things, based on what you just said, showing up. And that doesn't mean, when we talk about, outworking everyone else, it doesn't mean working, 15 hours a day. But what it
Nah,
does mean is do the things that others aren't willing to do, right? Just like simple sales statistics. And this always blows my mind. 48% of salespeople never follow up. 25% of salespeople make a second contact and stop. 12% of salespeople make 3 contacts and stop. And only 10% of salespeople make more than 3 contacts. And this is where
wow.
it gets even crazier. 2% of sales are made on the first contact, 3% on the second, 5% on the third, 10% of sales are made on the fourth, and 80% of sales are made from the 5th
Wow.
to the 12th contact. Right?
And it's
This
in a
blows
place where
my
most
mind
people didn't show
every
up.
time I read it. And all it means
Wow.
is they didn't show up. You followed up. You did something that other people weren't willing to do. You went out of your way, like Pincus said earlier. One of the biggest ways you can differentiate yourself from others is by not being in it for the money. It's by being in it to be of service, right? Pincus said that he helps people on a constant basis, even when he's not going to effectively, in a knowing way, get anything out of it, just because, right? Now that has to do with his personal development, but it also has to do with standing apart from everyone else in the industry. Most people, especially in the payroll space, it's all about being transactional. Are you going to use the service? You're not going to use the service. End the conversation. You are great, happy to serve. You're not, bye. And staying, being different and really showing up for other people is a great way to stand apart, especially in a service, in a space, I should say, that is extremely transactional. This is absolutely fantastic. I always like to end off pointing out, if everyone just take away at least one thing, something you wrote down today that you want to put into effect, that you're going to implement, make it at least one thing that you're going to take away from today that you're going to be able to start using right away and that you're going to actually put into implementation. Other than that, in this podcast series, we speak about things that are timely, interesting, that you can add to your skill set toolbox. If you loved what we spoke about on the podcast today, you could feel free to hit myself up for a 30-minute strategy session. You can feel free to message Pincus on LinkedIn. I'll obviously be putting his contact information in the email that I send out. And, for myself, we're booked out. We get booked up pretty quickly. So make sure to grab a slot. I put my contact information, my WhatsApp, my Calendly into the chat. And by all means, you can feel free, even again, it's 100% free, no strings attached, just to help people. You can ask me questions or just pick my brain on what we spoke about today. And Pincus, again, thank you very, very much for your time. It was an absolute ball. Had a tremendous amount of fun and learning along the way. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week. Take care. And until then.
Awesome. Thank you, Jakob, for having me. It was a pleasure. Be in touch.
Take care.